Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our extreme. I'm very happy to actually welcome Dr. Arun Sharma, our guest of honor for today's talk, and I'm very happy to have him here. In more than one capacities, he has come to this institute. Earlier, he has been involved in the capacity of an expert, as a researcher, as a mentor for MERA-India, and today as director of Jodhpur Institute and an expert to give a talk for MERA-India on implementation research and vector-borne diseases. I heartily welcome Dr. Arun Sharma today to NIMR for this talk on the MERA lecture series. So today's topic is extremely important and very close to our hearts as a public health people, and we all think on those terms because we are working on malaria, and malaria is on the verge, or I should not say verge, but on the journey of its elimination. And not only malaria, many other vector-borne diseases share that kind of environment and the discussion on elimination mode. So today's discussion and topic, it will be extremely important. I'm very happy to have Dr. Arun Sharma here with the plethora of audiences we have across this room and online who are present here. So he comes with very wide experience, which Dr. Sachin will be describing. And over to you, Sachin. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank
you. Good morning, all of you. And as Madam mentioned, I always, start with to tell people the specialty of, prospective lecture. So today's specialty of the lecture is Dr. Arun Sharma is one of the mentors also and coordinator also in MERA-India calls in the first call. Why this is special for us? Because he is also having a grant from MERA-India and he is a MERA-India fellow. So this is the first lecture from any MERA-India fellow. Yeah. So we look forward to hear him on implementational significance of implementational research in our studies. So before we start, I would like to introduce him. So Dr. Arun Sharma is currently serving as a director of ICMR National Institute for Implementational Research on Non-Communicable Disease in Jodhpur. He did his MBBS from NIIRNCD Medical College in Kolkata. MD in Community Medicine from National Institute of Medical Sciences, BHU. He also obtained MBA in Healthcare Administration from Faculty of Management Sciences, University of Delhi. He had served as a faculty in Community Medicine for 28 years and headed the Department of Biostat and Medical Informatics at University College of Medical Sciences for more than 10 years. He is a guest faculty at Faculty of Management Studies, which is a very renowned institute under Delhi University, and occupational health consultant to Delhi Metro Rail Corporation and other PSUs. He had been awarded Department of Health Research Visiting Scholarship to University of Illinois in 2015 for training GIS, spatial epidemiology Rockefeller ICO-WHI Scholarship in 2010. Hubbard Humphrey Fellowship to study epidemiology and biostat and mental health at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health in 2004-05, and WHO Travel Fellowship also. He has more than 70 research publications and supervised 27 MD and PhD dissertations. His current research interests are implementational research, GIS, malaria, vector-borne disease, One Health, zoonotic disease, environmental health, and chronic respiratory illness. Previously, his research work was on HIV/AIDS, malnutrition, and reproductive health. At present, he is the president for Society for Indoor Environment and associate editor of Indian Journal of Public Health. As I mentioned, he's a key member of MERA-India, especially Call 1, and he has been awarded a project from MERA-India as well. So with this, I invite Dr. Arun Sharma to start his talk.
Great. Thank you and good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Manjurahi to come here and deliver a lecture. It's a great honor for me, and I will try to live up to the expectations based on what Dr. Satin expected from me. Being, as he mentioned, I'm a teacher for last 28 years. And all of you will agree that teachers usually stand and talk. So it's difficult for me to sit and deliver a lecture. So I request I may be allowed to stand next to the screen and continue from there.
Please, it's a pleasure.
So let me begin by introducing National Institute for Implementation Research on non-communicable diseases. We are in the process of dropping the non-communicable disease from it so that it becomes an umbrella organization for carrying out implementation research on any public health matter anywhere in the world. That is what our vision is. And as you can see the picture, this is the institute located in Jodhpur. And I welcome you all whenever you get an opportunity or you feel a need, you are most welcome to visit. We will be glad to be your host there. And because it is an implementation research institute, the talk we are going to have today is on implementation research, especially its role in control of vector-borne diseases. I'm sure some of you must be familiar with the term, but relatively in public health, it is considered as a new area, a new one. I will say that nothing is new in public health. The knowledge of public health dates back to 300 years, and we have been doling out every time the same preventive mechanisms or interventions, which take different shapes and different names. So it might have been known as translational research, it might have been known as effectiveness research. The ultimate aim remains the same. So what is that aim that we are trying to do? Today, we will discuss that in context of vector-borne disease. So my talk will have following components to it. We are going to talk research, what is it about? Then what are the principles and methods of implementation research in brief? And what advantages and challenges we face when we talk about implementation research? And finally, about its application in your domain, that is vector-borne diseases. So, the word implementation is a very straightforward, simple thing that how do you convert something which is knowledge into an effective practice at the grassroots level or at the public health level. But academically speaking, we use three different terms. One is implementation per se, and then there's a term called implementation science, and then finally we have implementation research. Let us look into that, how do they differ? As I was saying, that implementation refers to integration of a new innovation or intervention within a specific setting or context. We will elaborate over a period of time what does it exactly mean when we come to actually doing the work. And how does the science differ from research? So you will appreciate that research is always one component of the science. Research is not the be all and end all. So science has an overarching definition, like it is a study of methods to promote this integration of research findings and evidence into health policy. So implementation science talks about the methods that we are going to use in carrying out an implementation research. And research, as you know, obviously, that it is documentation of the work that we are doing to achieve implementation science so that we have an effective implementation in place. So it looks like implementation research populates knowledge in the domain of implementation science, and this implementation science ultimately tells us what is the exact or the appropriate way of implementing something in the community for the betterment of the health of the people for whom it is intended. So this is a science which is multidisciplinary, because implementation, I believe, and you will also appreciate, can never be done in a folk tubular manner. Whether it is a public health intervention or it is a technological intervention, you always need experts from every field. Without the economists, you cannot design the costing part of a project. Without the help of sociologists and anthropologists, you do not know how the community is going to accept your proposal that you are going to implement there. Without the help of fundamental researchers or basic science researchers, you never know the molecular basis of disease, and unless you know that, you cannot develop an implementation project on it. So that's just to give an illustration that no research or no implementation can be done by a single discipline. It is always interdisciplinary, and implementation science is more interdisciplinary than any other sciences that we use in our public health domain. Right. So what does it aim to do? What does the implementation research or implementation science aims to do? First of all, to develop strategies for implementing evidence-based practices. How does the research paradigm work? We are coming to that. You develop a concept. Then you develop the protocol or the proposal out of that concept. and then you test in a so-called laboratory setting. That becomes our proof of concept. Proof of concept finally gets converted into evidence. And we say now it is evidence-based medicine. That is still is an experimental stage. The next stage starts when you convert that evidence into testing its efficacy as a tool or as a mechanism. And then that efficacy got tested in an effectiveness. Once these basic components are completed, then you launch into implementation. So to do that, we always define that we are saying we are developing or talking about the strategies that are used for implementation. We produce generalizable knowledge. The proof of concept or evidence which the medical science generates is a complex scientific jargon. But ultimately the needy or the utilizer of that person is the layman or the last man standing in the community. So this gap between complex scientific knowledge and the knowledge that is useful for the community, to bridge that gap, you need to have certain parameters and certain tenets which can translate this scientific knowledge into general knowledge, which is understandable and applicable at the grassroots level. That gap is primarily bridged by our implementation science. So that is called its primary aim. And it aids in development, testing, and refining of relevant theories, conceptual frameworks, as well as measures to advance implementation science. We practically, from my experience, I always believe that research need not start on the paper first. Research starts by visualization, by experiencing, and by interacting with the people. They are the primary source of research. And you do what is practical, what is applicable, and what is justifiable. Once that is done, then you start building, okay, what we did, was that right? If that was right, then there should be a model how to do it. And if that model appears, then you say, okay, now this model can be converted into a theory, and the theory will give me the framework which I can take to the next disease or the next community level. So this entire paradigm is basically envisaged into or contended into the aims of implementation research. So what is the scope? Again, it's a very wide subject in the sense it can be used in clinical sciences. It can be used in diagnostic instrumentation sciences or molecular biology, application of molecular biology and diagnostic tools in a public health setting, in a community setting. We also in COVID-19 that when such a large proportion of the community of the world has to be tested, it could not be confined to the specialized laboratories in high-level institutions. That technology of COVID testing had to be brought to the grassroots level that it can be performed even at a PHC. So a very complex technical science was brought to the use of the common man. And within a year, we could develop tools that self-testing of COVID-19 was possible, where if you come to think of it, RT-PCR, how many laymen can think of running an RT-PCR test? But within a year, we could develop self-testing devices, self-testing mechanisms. That is conversion of a pure science into a public health science. And that is where implementation research has a very important role to play. To give an example, and definitely whatever we do, it has to be integrated into policies and the strategy formulation, because for a diverse and a huge population-based country like India, straight jacketing or one size fits all never works. And in that context, implementation research, I believe, is most relevant for the Indian society or Indian population because of its diversity, heterogeneity. Okay. So that was the theoretical, sorry for this interruption. Let's pick up the threads again. We talked what are the aims and what is the scope. Now let us see how do we arrive at pre-implementation stage of a research. I was just talking about that only, that how does research originate? The first thing is, as I said, there's a concept. That concept you consider in your mind and then convert into a proof of concept. So the most preliminary scientific study that we do at first stage is proofing a concept, that whether the concept is viable or not, whether the concept can be examined or not. So that is known as the pre-intervention stage of a particular research idea. Once the proof of concept is there, then you think of testing it in the right conditions. And testing it in the right conditions means you carry out efficacy studies. And efficacy studies means the concept that you have developed as a research idea, whether it works or not. Let me give you an example from the non-medical field. Like, how does car works? How does car come into picture? So initially there was a concept that something can be put to an energized sector and using 4 wheels, something can be moved. because the mechanical knowledge was there. So the idea of developing a car came into existence. And then you are putting seats on it, you are putting a hood over it, and then a car is taking shape. Now what do? You want to see whether the car can actually take the people to a destination where it was intended to be. Once that is done, your proof of concept is ready. Now the question comes at the next level, efficacious. Is the car going to cost in a manner which is affordable for most of the people? Can we design it in such a way that all comforts that are required that can be provided? So those were the basic tenets. When they happened, a real car could be developed and it could be marketed. Now the question is, you experimented in the laboratory conditions or in your experimental setup, workshop condition, you said everything is going to work. When it actually went into the hand of a user, he is going to give you feedback whether the car is actually serving the purpose of maintaining it or not. Is it driving me at the right speed? Is it giving me enough safety? Is it giving me adequate mileage? Now the company will make a claim that yes, your interiors are very pleasant. You have a wonderful, very strong AC system, and in spite of that, the vehicle is going to give you 28 or 30 kilometers per liter of mileage. So that was the stage when the car was given to the people. And the company claimed that, okay, 28 kilometers per liter is the average that we are going to give you. But when they actually started using it, they found it's only 20. And they claimed that the AC will run good, but we learned no, for the first 5 minutes, you have to keep the car in the idling mode, then only the AC will start operating. Or when you are driving in a high hill mode, then you have to switch off your AC, otherwise the car will lose power. These are the things which company did not tell. Those were discovered when people were using it. And that becomes an effectiveness study. And when that happens, people go back to the drawing board, they improve the efficacy, they improve the atmosphere, they improve the air conditioning, etc. So better and better car design takes shape. And then it comes in a form which is acceptable to everybody. And when a concept becomes acceptable to everybody, that's where the implementation comes into picture. So we explore the possibility of implementation, adopt the idea, then implement. And then if it is a good idea, now let's come back to public health. If it is a good idea, it's an effective idea, it can achieve what it is supposed to achieve, then you think of sustaining it. And each of these words are very important. In a few minutes, we are going to say why they are going to be very important. So let me show you a conceptual. How does it work? So just to summarize pictorially, efficacy studies, what is going to work? And effectiveness studies, what is going to work, where and why. Why will give you the sustainability answer. Where will give you the contextualization of the work that you are doing. What works in Delhi may not work in Chennai. What works in Assam may not work in Maharashtra. So where and why it is going to work, these are important questions for finally implementing your ideas at the community level. And conceptually, if you want to see how on a timeline it progresses, first we say we are developing the pre-intervention. The question answered is, could a program work here? Then we look at efficacy studies, and that answers the question, does a program work? And then we do the effectiveness studies, which is making that particular program work for the purpose for which it is intended to. And that will include these tenets. This, my yellow box, is actually implementation research, when we are going to do exploration, adaptation, adoption, implementation, and finally sustainment. So when any research idea reaches here, we think we are ready for the implementation science. Is that okay? Am I going at the right speed? Yes. Okay, great. Now,
Can I interrupt you here?
Yeah, please, sure. Yeah.
At what stage does it go to the national program?
So at what stage it goes to the national program? I will say from here, effectiveness studies, so far as epidemiologists, as researchers, we are very happy here. Oh, we have made a program effective. Now, when you are going to launch it for a larger population, that is where it gets into policy making, planning, and strategizing for a unit. It may be a state, it may be a district, it may be a country, or it may be a subcontinent, whatever. Till here, I will say, if we can draw a line here, I will say up to here, this is all experimental work. It gets into national level when we launch into this area.
So my understanding is it gets into sustainment part. After you're done with research of implementation in a research mode, the ministry or the policy managers accepted as a proven tool?
I will beg to differ on that. The reason being, up to here, everything is under our control. We choose the population, we choose the time, we choose the design. Okay. But when you give it to the government, when you are asking it to launch, here the heterogeneity will appear. That means we said, okay, this is a project in malaria, this is the idea that's going to work, which will provide us elimination by 2030. And we gave it to the central government. Now, central government is not going to implement it alone. It has to give it to the state governments, right? If it has to give to the state governments, that's going to mean every state will have different financial implications. Every state has a different team, different orientation. So there, it will not be straitjacketing. It will be a dynamic process. Let every functional unit decide from this theoretical knowledge that we are giving what is going to work for them. And what is going to work is not decided beforehand. You launch, you see what are the challenges, you make modifications, you see what is working, you improve that, or you push that, and what is not working, you withdraw that. So it becomes a dynamic, interactive process.
So when does it come into policy?
It comes into policy at two levels. Number one, if there is an emergency, there is a pandemic situation, then it comes into the policy and it goes top down. When it is a routine condition, then when you see its success at the district level, when you see its success at a public primary health center level, then it becomes a policy for that state. And when you see that multiple states are able to launch and do it and successfully sustain it, then it should become a policy at the national level.
Similarly,
Yes, please.
So we also do the studies like phase one study for insecticide testing. Then we go for phase two.
Right.
Similar fashion which you are telling about the pre-study, then efficacy study, and then effectiveness. The third phase is in the community itself.
Yeah. So that is what is known as either translational research or implementation research.
Yes. After there, we directly go and oppose to the program, isn't it now?
I think sir, we'll have a discussion after you finish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Many ideas are coming into our heads.
Right. And what you said just now about the phases, I'll talk about phases also in a little bit. So we move ahead if there are no more questions at this stage.
Because
Anybody is noting questions from the online presenters? I think they might be putting questions in the message box. We'll take that up later on. Okay, so the answering to your question is, look at this diagram slowly and steadily and you will get to know what happens where. So it's a logical diagram as you can see. Intervention or practice of interest is generated here at the first step. Then we are asking the question, has the intervention or practice of interest shown efficacy? There are two possibilities, either no or yes. If efficacy is not there, go back and conduct your efficacy research. That means redo it because it is not efficacious. If you believe in your concept, we need to work on that. If you are lucky, your project is efficacious, fine. Next step, has the intervention or practice of interest shown an effectiveness? Not effective, again go back to effectiveness research and remodel it. If partially done, that means you are ready, but you are not fully ready. And can you wait very long? No, you need not wait because partial success has been shown. So you combine implementation research and effectiveness research together. This is called hybrid research. I'll show you what hybrid research means. And if everything is proved beyond doubt that yes, effectiveness of the research, effectiveness of the project or program has been demonstrated, confirmed, then you go for, mind it, we are just one caveat here. We are not talking about implementation. We are talking about implementation research. That means when the effectiveness is proven and you are actually implementing the program in the community, that's what the policymakers are going to do. That's what your infrastructure is going to do. But what is our role? We have to carry out implementation research when the policy and program has been launched. We as an outsider implementation researchers are looking at that launching, looking at that intervention itself and seeing whether I can do my research on the intervention process itself. So I'll give you an example. Yesterday I had a meeting with the CRO-WHO office and they are preparing to improve the National Program for Control of Non-Communicable Diseases, that is NPCDCS program. There is an observation. See, so Dr. Manju, now what you asked, how it becomes contextualized, let me say that. If you remember, NPCDCS program was launched in 2010. And over the last 12 years, we have not seen it as successful as we expected it to be. So it was a policy level thing done at the central government, given to all the states. What happened? That majority of the states could not implement the program in the desirable way. Neither the outcome has reached where it was expected to in the 12 years time. So what do we do now? We need to strengthen the program. So who will strengthen? The task of strengthening is of the experts of that subject. So WHO has taken up this mandate that it will talk to different states about at what stage the NPCDCS program is, what are the challenges, limitations at the implementation stage. And they may say, okay, there's a problem, there's not enough capacity. That means the doctors are not skilled in carrying out screening for non-communicable diseases of hypertension, diabetes, cancer, etc. in the community level. Why? Have they not learned, or they are too busy, or they do not have an aptitude for doing that? On the other side, does the community know that government has launched a program where you can go and get screened for hypertension, diabetes, carcinoma, cervix, etc.? Is the community aware about it? We don't know. In Kerala, the level of awareness may be very high, but in the western part of Rajasthan, the awareness may be abysmally low. Now, can we have the same implementation process there? No. So what WHO has done, it is going to sit with their first chosen 5 states. In 5 states, they will talk to the policymakers and planners of health systems in those states about how to strengthen the NPCDCS program. And they will ask them, what are the challenges and limitations you are facing, how to overcome them. And then they will give them advice and say, okay, this is the plan that you should follow and execute in your state. What is my role as implementation researcher? My role is to see this transaction happening. What did WHO tell the state? What did the state actually do with what WHO said at the PHC level, at the district level, and at the state level? And we as researchers are going to make an observation and documentation on that. So my role as a researcher is to find out what is being implemented by the concerned agencies and convert it into a research of that implementation process. Then it becomes implementation research. Otherwise, the idea is implementing your program. So we are researching the implementation process as implementation researchers. But we need not restrict ourselves only to the process of documenting. We can also participate in carrying out the research if we have that competency. So when we are doing the research in the testing the effectiveness and also the policy making and planning, then we conduct what is known as a hybrid research. Okay, and when it is a pure implementation research, we are going to observe the infrastructure. Are the drug supply regular? Are the equipments which are used for monitoring blood pressure and diabetes are of good quality? Are they serviceable? Can they really take the load of 1,000 screening in a day at a community health center? Can they take the load of 5,000 screening in a district hospital? Or can they take the load of 20,000 in a tertiary care hospital? That will be actually an implementation research. Right. So the role is also a little dynamic. Of course, you are researching the implementation, but you can be part of prior research. That is effectiveness or efficacious research. There also the implementation researcher may have a role to play. Any question at this stage? I might have confused you more than clearing things.
So just one thing.
Yeah.
So shall we take the questions
In the end, okay, absolutely fine, absolutely fine. I understand that. Okay. So here, when we are doing this, when we are doing this implementation research, we have to say that we use the similar techniques. We use mixed method study. That means we do a qualitative and quantitative techniques we use here. We design implementation strategies and then we test those implementation strategies. That is core implementation research domain. And when we combine with effectiveness research, that becomes a hybrid implementation research. Let me give you an example of that. So we said that we are going to use mixed methods or pragmatic trials, natural experiments, or hybrid design. Mixed methods are when, as I talked about this NPCDCS program, you collect quantitative data on the basis of parameters. What percentage of people you have made aware about existence of NPC-DCS program? Next, in the mixed method, you also want to know quantitatively, out of the population who are supposed to be suffering from hypertension, what percentage actually came to the hospital? What percentage of that started treatment? And what percentage of that sustained treatment for the entire life course? That is quantitative part. The qualitative part, the people who did not come to take part in the program or come to the government health sector, why they did not come? Now, the why cannot be answered through quantitative research. You have to carry out in-depth interviews. You have to conduct FGDs. You have to go and do a social gathering and talk to the people. You talk to key informant. You conduct key informant interviews. That is the qualitative part. So when you combine your qualitative and quantitative methods, then actually you get a clear picture. So again, I will say that from my experience being an epidemiologist, I was dedicated to quantitative research. But today I think quantitative research is incomplete unless it is complemented by qualitative research. You cannot have a complete idea of a disease problem unless you use both the methods to understand the complexity of the problem. There are many things which are lost in quantitative research. The finer points, the technical points cannot be captured through quantitative research. You have to talk to people to get to the root that why certain things are not happening. So mixed design is the most important tool in our implementation research. Pragmatic trials, you don't have an opportunity. The government does not believe in conducting research. They said, oh, that work belongs to the people who sit in laboratories and offices. At the grassroots level, we don't do it. Fine. So at grassroots level, when the PHCs and CHCs are delivering out the program, you go and study that. That becomes your pragmatic trials because what is being implemented, you are observing in that ground setting or ground level setting. And natural experiments, this is not it's a weakest link, I will say, in implementation research because the scope of natural experiments is gradually reducing as we are moving towards a structured delivery of healthcare practices. And finally, I said hybrid design. I'll come to a little more detail of what is hybrid design. We are the biggest challenge our country at this moment faces is, we'll show you in vector-borne disease context also, that we have plenty of effectiveness research carried out, but minimal of implementation research carried out. Because our scientists are geared up, trained, educated, and skilled in conducting effectiveness research, not implementation research. In fact, when I got this opportunity to lead this institution, let me confess, I was also not much aware of what implementation research is about. But then, because I wanted to take up the challenge, I educated myself. And when I went to the institute, my majority of the scientists say, sir, ye implementation research hota kya hai? What is it after all? I said, good. At least you ask that question, then we can start from the very basic implementation research hota kya hai. It's a good question to ask so that you are not imaginatively, subjectively trying to do something in the name of implementation research. Rather than that, you better learn and then do it. Then you will be probably more correct in your approach in doing what you're supposed to do. So, when I say that you are already much trained and very confident and comfortable in doing this, but you are not yet comfortable in doing that. So why not go for using both processes in your promoting your research agenda? And that is where the role of hybrid research comes into, when you are doing simultaneously effectiveness and implementation research. There are three broad categories of hybrid research, type 1, 2, and 3. So the type 1 says, test clinical or prevention intervention, the intervention that you are planning, you know it is efficacious. Now you are going to actually launch in the community to test its effectiveness. Along with that, you collect information in implementation. So implementation here is a minor part. This becomes a major part. This is type 1 hybrid study. And on the other extreme is, you are 100% sure about the effectiveness part, just you need to launch. But how meticulously the launch will be and how effectively it will be taken up, that will depend on the implementation strategy that has been taken up to launch that program. So when you are doing that research on whether the implementation strategy is robust, it is giving me the results, and also you collect information in the quantitative part on the effectiveness part, that becomes your type hybrid design. And when both are equally important or you are doing in equal components, then you do a mixed method hybrid type 2 design. So mostly I am sure most of us are in the stage where we have the need to carry out effectiveness and implementation simultaneously. Because another reason is we do not have that big an infrastructure for carrying out public health research. It's the same people who double up in doing the effectiveness research, and the same people have to do the implementation research also. So we are better off if we design in a hybrid manner so that we don't lose time in converting effectiveness to implementation. We parallelly run both. In a new system where it's being developed for the first time, if there's a revamping of health infrastructure, then probably effectiveness can be followed by implementation. But when you are changing an existing model, something exists, you need to change for betterment. There, hybrid design will be more effective rather than doing pure implementation research or pure effectiveness research. Right. So on the basis of that knowledge, as I was telling you earlier, that we do practically the research, and then that research gets converted into theories. And theories are providing the frameworks, and the frameworks are ultimately converted into models. So how does it look like? This particular diagram looks very complex, but let me try to simplify for you. Any public health policy program or research that we do, at the core of it are the people. It's a people-centric program. What is the ultimate aim? We want to improve the health of the citizens in general. And whatever be the problem they're facing, at the core are the individuals involved in addressing, whether these are patients suffering from hypertension, or it is a malaria infected area, or it is the cases of filariasis, whatever it is. The core is my patients or my target population. And then the target population functions in an immediate microenvironment. In our MERA study, in the behavioral component of the MERA program, we are targeting on the human behavior and the immediate microenvironment, whether it is collection of dirty water, or whether it is the practice of throwing garbage, or whether it is the practice of not having our houses properly sanitized against the mosquito. So that is the immediate inner setting. And that inner setting works under a purview of outer setting, which is beyond the control of these individuals. That is, whether the mosquito nets are made available by the outer system or not, whether the insecticide spray is being carried out by the outer setting, which is not in the control of the individuals. That is the outer setting. And together, this outer and inner setting decides that intervention that you are going to launch and whether the intervention will be adopted or not. Because if you give to an uneducated or uninitiated community the integrated bed nets, they will refuse it at the beginning. There could be rumors, or there could be affordability issue, or they may say, if we sleep outside and we sleep on the floor, how will you hang the mosquito net there? So those are problems which are challenges in adaptation of the particular intervention that you are giving. So you have to look at all this framework. And this is according to the processes. What are the processes? Are you going to educate the people first and give the net? Or you want to give the net and educate? Or you want to give the net, let them use. If they can't use, then I will educate. So what will be the process I'm going to use? That has to be decided here. And then this has to be based on 4 components and adaptable periphery. Adaptable periphery means the larger periphery of the thing, where the government's decisions, availability of funds, and the policy to give priority to malaria is there or not. That is what is going to decide. So this becomes my complete milieu, and that is called a consolidated framework for implementation research, where we have to take care of the individuals, the inner setting, the outer setting, the intervention itself, and the peripheral factors which are influencing my implementation program. There are several conceptual frameworks. Most commonly used and most easily understood conceptual framework is called this consolidated framework for implementation research. Models are disease specific. Models are not related to the overall theories. For a particular disease, you implement something and then you say, okay, this particular model is going to work in Bihar for implementation of bed net distribution. But for Kerala, you do not use the same model. You may use a different model. So the model level will be different, but they will be falling under the conceptual framework. And like all quantitative sciences, or rather all sciences, outcome measures, how implementation research has been successfully done, how the implementation has been successfully carried out, you need to evaluate that. and for that evaluation, it depends. What are we going to measure? Now, implementation research can measure all three domains. Final is, like in the previous conceptual framework, the assessment. The assessment can be done at the individual level. The assessment can be done of inner setting. The assessment can also be done of outer setting, or the assessment can also be done of the surrounding environment. And then we accordingly see how to measure that outcome. So, if it is implementation outcome at the individual level, let's start in the reverse way, patient outcome, then what do you see? As what has been implemented, whether that has been able to improve the health status of the people or not, whether it has been able to control the symptoms of the disease for which the program has been implemented, or whether the functions are appropriately performed in delivering the healthcare there or not. And finally, whether it satisfies the need of the population, qualitatively, whether they are happy with the treatment. I went to the PHC, I got the medicine, but the way doctor talked to me, I'm not happy with that. Medicine is not everything. If he had spoken 2 sweet words, half of my disease might have been gone. Satisfaction is not. So all these 4 components can be measured at the patient level. Then coming to service outcomes, how well the service has been provided. That you measure by efficacy, safety, effectiveness, equity, and whether the service is patient-centric or not. These are the parameters on which we are going to judge the processes, the process of delivering healthcare under that particular model. And finally, all this is possible when your design, your content is satisfying the condition, whether the program is feasible, whether it has a fidelity, whether it is right penetration. Like we say that the healthcare is not delivered unless it is delivered to the last man standing in the community. So what is the penetration? Since it is for the people, the question is again, which I was talking earlier, is it acceptable? And very key and crucial thing, is it sustainable? Majority of the efficacy research and effectiveness research ends at, yes, I have done a good job, I have developed a good model. Can I sustain it? That we never test in our effectiveness level. That will come only in implementation level. How to make that program sustainable if it is true? That's a very important component. And whether people will take it up and whether it will fit into the budget of that particular country or state or district, that will be a key figure. So together, all these parameters are going to tell us whether my implementation research or implementation has been successful or not. And whether it has been successful or not is the matter of research, and this can be evaluated on these parameters. Right? Now, I'm introducing another term, de-implementation. What is that? As I said, we are not a new community, we are not a new society. We have been having programs since the humanity ages. But let's come down from the history to a modern times. Since 1947, in 75 years, how many changes tuberculosis control program has undergone? 3. How many changes malaria control program has undergone? How many modifications we have done? How many revisions we have done? And where did we make the mistake? Where did we err? That we had an existing program. Suddenly we realized this is not working. Let's put another program without thinking what is happening to the older program. So there is a need scientifically. Whatever is being done, if it is not effective, if it is controversial, if it is ambiguous, or the results are not testable, you need to stop the program. So first you say, I am going to stop my existing malaria program in totality. That is de-implementation. So far you were doing this, we were doing a presumptive treatment for fever using chloroquine. That presumptive treatment is no longer scientifically valid. Stop that first. Don't say, let's continue with the preventive treatment and the new 3-drug regime has come, the artemisinin-based therapy has come, let's give that also. That's a dangerous implementation. So, existing program, if, for example, again in tuberculosis control. Before the revised tuberculosis control program is launched, you should be able to stop all that was being done in the previous tuberculosis control program. That's what science says. That's what implementation science says. That you should be prepared to accept your fault, errors in your program, and announce the implementation of a program, stop it altogether, then go for the launching of the new program. So, the implementation research, that before the implementing, before bringing down a program, pulling down a program, you should have equal evidence that why the program should need to be stopped. So that process is known as researching that will generate enough evidence that we need to stop the program. That is the implementation research. And that is carried out to prove that the program is ineffective, the program is contradictory, it is not fulfilling the objective, or it is ambiguous. People are not able to get it correct. Or finally, we are not actually tested it, we launched it in the time of requirement. For example, again, COVID-19, in the beginning, you remember how much craze was there for buying chloroquine and hoarding it? How much need was felt that don't touch any object for 72 hours? People became paranoid. They started washing everything because those practices were not tested. Because in pandemic time, you don't have enough time to test anything. You simply launch. But later on, you came to know those were all false alarms, or those practices were actually not required because that was never tested. So you need to de-implement. We said these are the do's. Use your mask. Okay. Sanitize your hand. And people started like cleaning their vegetables, raw vegetables, any package delivered, put it 72 hours under sunlight. And then some people will try to put sanitizer on that also. That was practiced because that was the knowledge. But did any agency, whether it is CDC or whether it is WHO or whether it is the Ministry of Health, ever announce, don't do those practices, they are not relevant anymore? No, we only learn by ourselves. कि नहीं ऐसा करने की जरूरत है. That's an unhealthy practice. If you're advocating something, the moment it is proved that this advocacy is not right, please announce again, don't do it anymore, it is not right. We fail on that. So de-implementation research is even rarer than implementation research as an act. Right? Okay. Now, IR is not, we have a tendency that whatever we talk about, we think and try to push that it is the best. So today, if I'm using the term implementation research, I may sound as if implementation research is the all and end all of all health problems in the country. It's not. It's not. Let us take it in a pragmatic manner. The translational scientists will say, without translational research, you cannot achieve anything. And then the management graduates will say, the management principles, you never applied management principles, how can you be successful? So let us not be that compartmentalized in our approach. We accept that implementation research is not the perfect science. It has its limitations and challenges. So what are those limitations and challenges? Implementation research can never be overarching. It has to be contextualized. Again, repeating, what works for a tribal community does not work for an urban elite community. What works for Jammu and Kashmir does not work for Tamil Nadu. It has to be in context of the population, targeted population, that we can do implementation research. We looked at a plethora of outcomes. It is not possible practically, probably, to measure all parameters of outcome at the process level, at the outcome level, and at the impact level. We have to choose. So but we will talk about it. That's a very important thing. So contextualization was an issue. Too many outcomes is an issue. Using homegrown measures. Homegrown measures, as I said, West Bengal is assessing on a different parameter and Kerala is assessing on a different parameter. At the central level, we cannot compare them. Consistency of unit of analysis. This year, I decided to go for AVER. Next year, I am going on API. Third year, I am using another parameter. So there is no consistency. That is another challenge. And why it happens? Because of our problems. The kind of problems that we face. That is, इस साल तो डेटा कलेक्ट करने के लिए ब्लड सैंपल कलेक्ट करने के लिए स्टाफ है. Consistency of, as I said, this year we have staff, so we can collect blood samples. Next year we do not have staff to collect the blood sample. Money has not come. We will change our pattern. That is not allowed, and that is dangerous for the program. In that sense, consistency of unit of analysis is a challenge which we cannot maintain most of the time. Disproportionate measures. Disproportionate measurements means my population size is 5 million and I'm still using my calculated sample size of 500 population. Fine. For a quantitative research of case control study, 500 sample size works for 5 million. But when it comes to public health implementation, out of 5 million population, taking a sample of 500 will not do justice. Okay. Or somebody is too ambitious, I will cover the entire 5 million and use up the whole money only for one particular analysis, forget about other things. So we have to be proportionate in terms of the measurements that we are going to make. And that has to be practically oriented, not driven by the formula for calculation of sample sizes. These are some terms: synonymy, homonymy, and instability. These are again challenges. Being synonymous, being homonymous with respect to the anthropological component of human behavior, we have to be on the same page. I won't delve more into it. We need anthropologists and sociologists to talk about details of that. And impractical measures. See, you understand when we make actually impractical demands on the system to generate data. So these are some of the challenges that we face when we conduct implementation research. But at the same time, there are opportunities also, and its usefulness also in terms of taking the evidence-based interventions to its logical conclusion. We are to ensure sustainability in government-related health programs when it is for a larger population. Sustainability is the key issue because project mode, that WHO is paying for running the program for 5 years. UNICEF is giving for running the program for 2 years. What after those 2 years funds are exhausted? What after 5 years? Looking for a sustainable model is a key to success of a successful implementation of a program. And again, implementation research is going to look at that sustainability issue. It's not going to ensure sustainability. It will just examine whether your program is sustainable or not, because you're doing research. You're not actually implementing the program, right? Okay. Improve adoption. Again, in this example, the India Hypertension Control Initiative decided to give medicines to the people for hypertension and do a screening for hypertension. But where is the uptake? The patients are not coming. In spite of launching IHCI in Madhya Pradesh, only 10% of the hypertensive people came into the treatment. So we did not prepare. We did not prepare society to come and take treatment. So after with so much fanfare and with so much money, we launched the program and the utilization is only 10%. That means we did not do our homework on adoption of the program. Similarly, improve implementation. This is a dynamic process. Today's value is 10%. Tomorrow it will become 15%. Next day, here it should become 20%. That dynamism has to be there, and how to improve. You need to keep continuously researching how to improve. That process has to go on. Okay. How much time do I have, Dr. Manju? I am continuing and
So go ahead, sir.
till people fall off to sleep. Okay.
So maybe our people are waiting when you reach the vector-borne control program.
I'm coming to that. Almost.
Yes, so it's a good primer for the. It's a good.
Yeah, because I thought that it's a new subject for most of the people. I have to be a little elaborative about the issue. Anyway, please bear with me. Sitting on that chair, I know is a huge challenge. That's another implementation problem. The speaker can go on, but how much the audience can take, we have to keep that in mind. Anyway, so these are the parameters on which you have to judge before you launch the implementation research program. The strategies are correct or not, whether it is cost effective or not, and the fidelity can be tested or not. I have put scaling up if possible in a red because earlier we said a thing that, I need not go back. I said contextualization is very important. And once you scale up, then the context is lost. I found the program very successful in Haryana, a small state. Now I say let Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan also adopt it with a huge state. Scaling up is not possible unless you contextualize to that state. So, though they say it is an opportunity, I personally do not say scaling up as an opportunity in any program. It should be contextual. Even I will say in a particular block or in a particular ward, if something is successful, no guarantee that it will be successful in another ward. In Delhi, if you implement something in Saket, try and implement that in the Pusta area of the Yamuna bed. They are absolutely worlds apart. You cannot have the same scaling technique there. So that is why I always see it as a caveat when we say about scalability. Forget about scalability. If I say that on any other public problem, people will throw me out. I can take the liberty to say this here. Anyway, we talked about opportunities and implementation challenges. Right? Okay. And then there are final slide on the basics, limitations of implementation. Implementation can result into program build. We launch with large fanfare, we launch with objectives, everything fine. 2 years down the line, the objectives are lost, the program went into altogether a different direction because we did not keep a check. It may be successful also, but majority of the time, program drift refers to program failure. Permanence of evidence. We did not generate data every year or every quarter to see how the program is going to be good. We did not have the evidence. One very good program, I always think of the revised National Tuberculosis Control Program. Data monitoring, supervision, and ready availability of the data was first done in tuberculosis program through the NIIRNCD portal. And every district, every village is updating the data simultaneously, and you have access to the data. That was a key factor in success of the revised National Tuberculosis Control Program as compared to the other disease control program. So this permanence of evidence generates when continuously you are creating evidence from implementation and then trying to see whether it needs change or we are on the right track of success or not. And assumptions that dissemination and implementation comes after everything else. No. The implementation and dissemination go hand in hand. You have to implement and you have to disseminate information also, so that whenever changes are required, that can be immediately brought on board. Otherwise, the process gets delayed, falls into a loop, and it will never come out of that. So, what are the limitations? Limitations thus mean mismatch between interventions, target populations, community settings, and service systems where they are delivered. Unless they are in synchronization, unless they are on the same path, don't think of scaling up. Don't think of replicating what we have done in one particular area to the other. Those are the limitations of implementation. So we talked about challenges, we talked about opportunities, we talked about implementation limitations. All right. Now let us come to where do we stand in terms of implementation research in context of vector-borne diseases. You know better than me that these are the common vector-borne diseases we are facing in our country. So I am no expert. Let me confess, I'm no expert on vector-borne diseases. Okay. So what I did, I thought, let me do some literature search. That I went to PubMed. I didn't do a systematic review because of paucity of time. I just did put some keywords. And what did I say? I went to PubMed. At first level, I wrote the name of the disease only. When I wrote malaria, it gave me 1,07,025 text articles from PubMed. Similarly, for Kala-Jar, it was 14,000 something. For dengue, it was 27,000. And for filariasis, only 1,832 articles when I'm typing the first word, only disease. When I add implementation research to that, the number goes down. The second bar you can see is way smaller than, and this is global picture, right? And then I put disease and India together. The number of observations, the number of studies come down. I'll show you it in the next slide. These bars, the dimension, this is the global picture for the disease. This is the global picture for disease with implementation research. This is in India, and this is only India and implementation research. You just want to visualize that how much difference exists between the nature of research that is conducted. To read the numbers, let us use the other slides. So, if I remove the disease part, I'm looking at implementation research and disease. 7,641 globally studies conducted on disease and implementation research. In India, out of that, only 125 for malaria. Again, for Kala-Jar, 2,539 implementation research work done all over the world. In India, only 27. So just to give you a comparative picture that for the major, which are our major vector-borne diseases, where do we stand in terms of research and in context of research, the implementation research. Now, another interesting thing that when what I decided to read some of these articles here, which are implementation research articles from India, these 8, 27, 39, I tried to go through them. That at least let me see. The irony is, when I read these papers, they are not on implementation research. That is the fallacy of the way we search. That if the word implementation has been used anywhere in that particular article, it will throw up as an implementation. And if research has also been used, it will throw up. Even if I combine, I find that out of these 8 or 39 articles, hardly 2 or 3 articles are actually talking about implementation research. So the scenario of implementation research vis-a-vis index journal publications, because I'm sorry, I confess, I did not get time to explore other sources. Like I should have seen the documents of the Ministry of Health or NBVDCP program, or for that matter, NIMR research, the reports, etc. I did not get time to do that. I'm confessing it. But at least on a global picture, through the published research, this is the scenario of implementation research on vector-borne diseases globally and in context of India also. Slides are not moving. Yeah, even within the Indian context, now there are only two bars. Research done in India, and out of that, how many are done in? This remains constant. These are the implementation research and the number of published articles available on different diseases in India. These are the two terms I am seeing. Even then, there is a wide disproportion between total research done and implementation research done. Now, to look into what has already been done, let's take into malaria. And the first paper I quote, which is really relevant to implementation research, is ma'am's own paper with Dr. Sharma on active engagement of private healthcare providers is needed to propel malaria elimination in India. Now, what has happened? This is what you can say a proof of concept. That yes, 70% of the population in the country still uses the private source for making its healthcare needs meet. So, there is an observation made that countries' malaria data are collated from the public health center only by the aggregated paper-based health surveillance system, which is considered as weak. That means an identification has been done of a problem, but we are yet to do an implementation. Why not on the basis of this, the malaria control program takes cognizance and understands this need, which has been highlighted by one of the reputed malaria scientists. Until today, we still do not have a fully digital system of data collection. So implementation has not been done there. Again, absence of private sector data is a serious caveat identified. We know it through agents. Whenever we go to do a program, we know private sector is not providing data. Now, this knowledge is there. Have we done anything to convert that knowledge into implementation? Have we thought that how to involve private sector in making sure that the patient they are seeing the data must be made available? It is not impossible. Why not impossible? Because there are other governments, other countries where the same private practice-based system of healthcare delivery exists, but by law or by rule, the government gets every data. Right? So why is it not possible in India? It's doable, but we have not yet done that. And finally, the involvement of the private healthcare sector is crucial. Yes, we know that since last 50 years, the private sector being a key player, its involvement is crucial. But where is implementation? Where has government brought out policies to ensure that private sector participates in healthcare research, or at least share the data so that we have a complete picture of the healthcare of the problem in the country? This is a serious, I will say, gap in implementation research. Why not on the basis of this paper or these recommendations of the learned authors, there have been changes made. This article was published in 2022. Okay, it's a very new article, 2022 April, but at least this should form the basis for bringing those changes. Then that will be a true implementation research. Another study in malaria. Now, okay, now move to Kalajar. Now, I say another thing, that in communicable diseases, treatment for malaria is known since more than 70 years. Treatment for Kalajar is known since more than 50 years. And we have very good paraphernalia or so-called infrastructure available for tackling these diseases, at least on paper in all the states. But in spite of 50 years, have we been able to achieve elimination of the disease? We are still struggling. And we are always shifting the goalpost. Eliminate malaria by 2000, eliminate malaria by 2010, then 20, then 30. Keep on shifting the goalpost till you actually may score the goal. Doesn't matter whether you flout the rules there or not. Sorry for saying this, but this is what is happening. Kalajar. Now, why I say this? In Kalajar, look at this. The implementation of action plan, this is a study conducted by Saxena et al. And they tried to do what they claim, successful experiment of district level plan. Fine, we are not denying. But what did they see? The prevalence of cases decreased from 12.42% to 8.59% in 1992 to 1994. They generated evidence that in Vaishali district of Bihar, they could bring about this change. Now, what as a policy maker should infer this change from? As a mathematician, as a statistician, I will say, okay, 4% decrease in 2 years. So, if we do a linear extrapolation, at least in 20 years, it should be 90% decrease. What happened after 1994? Did anybody care to answer what is happening in Vaishali district after this 4% change? Has it come down to 2%? Has it come down to 0%? Or has it gone up again to 20%? That is implementation research. You saw the proof of concept. Vaishali mein, I can do primary healthcare system utilization for visceral leishmaniasis control. What next? Is Vaishali now a Kalajar free? Has that model been given to other districts of Bihar? Or has it been tested for that matter in any state of the Bihar? This is 30 years down the line. This is where we are seriously lacking in converting our scientific knowledge into implementation. Another example from Kalajar. I found more interesting papers in Kalajar. Visceral leishmaniasis in Bihar state continues to be endemic, as if we are taking pride in that. That in spite of so many years, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit critical, standing here among the scientists. Please pardon me for saying this, but this is fact according to me. So, in Bihar state continues to be endemic despite the existence of effective treatment. So, how effective is the treatment if you have not been able to control the disease? If we could eliminate polio from the majority of the world, if we could eradicate smallpox, then that means it's doable. So if you have an effective treatment, why we cannot eliminate or why we cannot eradicate? Somewhere we are lacking in converting that proof of concept or effectiveness study into implementation. And because we are not adequately researched that where are we failing in this transition, that bridge that is to be created between effectiveness research and implementation, we never bothered to look at that. And that's why we are shifting our goalpost and trying to eliminate every 5 years so many of the diseases. And then there is Dr. O.P. Singh summarily sums up what I said. He said many challenges remain to be overcome, including availability of drug, cost of treatment, efficacy, adverse effects, and growing parasite resistance. Therefore, better emphasis on implementation research is urgently needed. He said that in 2016. I have not seen anything coming up that what has been done following what Dr. O.P. Singh and his team wrote about implementation research in colleges. So, as this institution, as a part of this institution, I am one of you. I also say that this is where we need to look at the literature which is already existing, utilize that, and now convert into implementation. And when you are doing that implementation, simultaneously carry out implementation research for that. I'm very close to concluding. Acute encephalitis syndrome. Here, the title of the story says acute encephalitis syndrome, a remarkable public health success story. Again, I have that same critical question. Have we eliminated acute encephalitis syndrome? Are we considering a success story when in the paper itself, the values given are the incidence has got down from 18.2 to 15? Is it the time to dance and rejoice that we have successfully completed AES when the number has just got down from 18.2 to 15? What about these remaining 15 per million cases which are still occurring? How can we say that it's a success story? And their mortality reduction from 32 to 12.6%. Is it public health practice? It is the principle of health sciences that once you achieve 12.6% mortality reduction, you should be starting dancing and considering yourself successful? I'm afraid I will not. Then the very principles of fundamentals of health or right to health are, not achieved, then how can you say it's a success story? You might say it's a story in making a successful attempt. You cannot call it a success story with such limited achievements. And this complacency is what pulls us down. This complacency ki itna karke hi hum khush ho gaye ki we have done, that stops us from doing better. This is where we need to focus. And finally, only one paper I came across, though I did not read all the papers, what I read, where I found a really successful implementation research has been done. So this is a study conducted in Kerala by Gopalan and his team. Community engagement to control dengue and other vector-borne diseases. I request all of you to read this paper, how an implementation research is done at the grassroots level. What did they do? They actually selected 2 blocks. They involved the parties, the local community. They involved the local members there and asked them, how do you control dengue here? What are the problems that you are facing? Is it about the mosquito? Is it about the management of mosquito breeding site? Or is it about taking the patient for treatment? So every aspect they took into consideration. They made teams. You look after the mosquito control measure. You look after the patient transport. You look after the sanitation in the community, and you maintain the data. So they created teams in those wards, and those wards were monitored on every 15-day basis. And in 3 months, they could demonstrate that they had a study, and this was a type 1 hybrid design because they implemented something new and they simultaneously researched whether it is implementable or not. And they measured on the basis of feasibility, acceptability, the challenges faced, the outcome, and the impact evaluation. Did it really bring down the dengue incidence? Did it really clean the mosquito breeding sites? Did it really help improve the risk of dengue among the population there? On these parameters, they have written. So I recommend, if you want to see how a good implementation research is carried out and documented, do read this paper. This will give you a most complete view. And then, so to conclude, where do we stand? From the data we saw, large number of efficacy studies, significant number of effectiveness studies, but implementation studies are minimal. So the simple answer is truncate the pyramid. That's all. Reverse the pyramid. You have enough knowledge here, you have enough knowledge here, now concentrate. And probably we'll be in a better off position. That's it. Thank you.
I have several questions.
Yeah.
House is open for questions online and offline.
If you can go back to your, I don't know if it's possible to hear, to the
Yes.
survey where you showed the different types of researchers.
Okay. Can we go up in the slides? I'll tell you where to stop. Further up.
Yes.
The metro line system, the slide number 11. Please put the slide number 11. Yeah.
So my questions are twofold. One is where would you put translational research into the picture? And second is whose baby is the implementation research? Who is qualified and who is not qualified to do?
Okay. Everybody is qualified and nobody is qualified. By that, what I mean is, if you think that you need to do an implementation research, then you compile your team, the people, the kind of job which is to be done. For example, I'm answering the second part first, that in implementation research, what do you want to know? You want to know whether my program is cost effective or not. You need a health economist to do that. You want to see whether the adaptability of the program will be there or not. You need a sociologist and anthropologist to look at the adaptability of the program. Feasibility. Feasibility will be given by the people who will actually launch the program. That means if the PHC medical officer, if the community health center medical officer and your ASA worker and ANM are responsible for launching, feasibility will be told by them. So you need people who understand the dynamics of working of ANM, ASA and the PHC medical officer. Who is that? It could be district level medical officer or I will say grassroots level public health worker or a public health researcher. These are the people. Let me give you an example. There's an organization called George Institute. It's a private organization, has offices in India. They carried out a mental health project in Andhra Pradesh before the division. They called it a SMART project. SMART project, SMART is an acronym. They actually trained the ASA workers and ANMs in screening for mental diseases in rural population. Now, if we ask or if we generally talk, how can an ASA or ANM know what is depression, what is schizophrenia, and what is manic depressive psychosis? But they demonstrated that by training them not in understanding the jargon of manic depressive psychosis and schizophrenia, simply by knowing that look at these signs and symptoms, which otherwise also you might be looking. If a person is depressed, any man with a woman with common sense can make out this person looks depressed. Okay, this person is behaving abnormally, shouting, tearing her clothes, not maintaining her hygiene properly. There must be some mental problem. So these kind of words were given to the ASA workers and ANM. Identify if you can find people like that. And your only task is, if you suspect anything that these are symptoms present, just refer to the PHC medical officer. Now, PHC medical officer is simply an MBBS doctor, he's not a psychiatrist. But He can at least do a mini mental examination test. Can be he can perform on a suspected case, or he can administer to the patient any depression scale or DAS scale can be administered, and he knows that yes, in the DAS scale or mini mental scale, this person is fit to be referred. All that he does is refer the patient from the PHC to the CHC. Now, they did not become psychiatrists. They did not become mental health experts. But the program ensured that they participated in improving screening of mental health cases. It's doable. So who will do? Who are the takers? Who are the doers? That you have to judge on the basis of what you are doing. We are now conducting a study of implementation research. It's called a non-pharmacological intervention for improving the quality of life of COPD patients in a low-income setting. What are we doing there? We are calling COPD patients to a center, and we are using local volunteers in training them how to give exercises of breathing to a patient, how to modify the diet of a COPD patient. And we are training not the experts, we are training local volunteers. And we want to see whether these volunteers will be able to bring an effective change in the quality of life of COPD patients. This is an implementation. Who is doing? The volunteers. Now, this is our skill set as researchers, whether we can identify the right kind of volunteer there or not. So who does implementation research? It is not a blanket area. Once you design your project, then you will know who all will be able to do the work that you are supposed to do. Difference between translational research and implementation research. Translational research is a step prior to implementation research. When I have developed polio vaccine, I know polio vaccine is going to be useful. I have done my phase 3 trial. It's certified to be used for human effectiveness, or on human beings it can be used. From that phase 3 trial, taking the polio vaccine to the community and doing it on a set of volunteers of children is my translational research. Where I have to see whether the cold chain can be maintained effectively at a PHC or not, whether the ANM will be able to draw the syringe in the exact amount of fluid in the syringe or not. That is translational research. And implementation research will come after that. I have given the vaccines, I have educated the children, their mothers, parents. Now I am launching the program. Let us see what percentage of children will come for the vaccination. That will be implemented.
So I can take two messages. One is multidisciplinary.
Absolutely.
And second is highly specialized.
Yes. So we in this COPD research, who did we select? We selected an anthropologist as my research associate. I selected a male staff nurse and a female staff nurse and a physiotherapist, because they are the people who are going to launch the program in the community. I did not blanket go for an MSc biochemistry or as MS sociology people to come and do the research for me. No, they have to be relevant to the task they are doing. All right.
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, for malaria, we have identified few districts, like these are highly endemic districts from last many years. They are still highly endemic.
Exactly, yeah.
And we know some factors like tribal population is there. These are forested areas. These are known factors, but not very well documented. If we want to document, yes, this is the one district and these are the factors that are to be taken care. How we can proceed, because implementation research is...
if correct me, Dr. Sachin, if I'm wrong, the current research that we are doing, the behavioral component of our project, MERA-India project, that is exactly looking at that what are the, in a given setting, in a high endemic area, what are the factors which are still present and which are letting the malaria sustain in the area. That's already being done. So to give you in brief, what I remember right now, we are going to the household. We are not only inquiring about the number of cases that happened in that area, we are also doing an observation checklist. Is there a potential mosquito breeding site? Is there a potential source of transmission of the disease because there are infected people in the area? What is the movement of the people? What is their clothing pattern? And what is their living pattern? Now in those high endemic areas, that is the data we are collecting. But here, the one thing that needs to be done, that the data I get from Bareilly and the data I get from Goa and the data I get from Meghalaya is going to be different. I need not analyze them together. I need to look at Bareilly data, the Bareilly as a separate entity and Meghalaya sites as a separate entity. Then only I can find the right answer. So implementation research will be looking at the Bareilly problem from Bareilly perspective and suggesting a solution there. And not taking the same solution to Meghalaya. That's what is the next step. That will be implementation research. Yeah.
And how the unit of test is, like the example you said, Bareilly, but these have different blocks.
Yeah, so unit of testing is you divide on the basis of the known parameters, that whether it is an urban area or a rural area. If it is an urban area, obviously you are going by the wards. If it is a rural area, you are going by the villages. Unit of testing, you have parameters. These are the risk factors for malaria transmission. Whether it is the mosquito breeding site, whether it is the mosquito biting habit, or whether the people's movement or people's clothing habit and use of impregnated bed nets. Now, these are 5 standard parameters. So you see that where impregnated bed net is the deficiency, where management of mosquito breeding site is the deficiency. Bareilly may be problem with the breeding site. Meghalaya may be problem with the impregnated bed net. So you identify which particular parameter is to be given more emphasis in which area. But my units of test are standard, because for malaria control, those are the demonstrated standard tests.
So in this, identification of problem is also a part of it.
Absolutely. Identification of the problem is indeed a part of the problem. Dr. Rajendra is raising his hand.
It's a question also on the online chat.
Yeah. So meantime, I'll take, we have some questions here.
Okay.
So there's a question, how do we consider homegrown measures in multi-centric studies with different states? If so, will the conclusion be site specific?
No, I think I got I could communicate the message wrong. Homegrown measures are not encouraged. They are not required. There has to be standard measurements. You can, that is what I was saying, that if you test on different parameters in West Bengal from Kerala, then you cannot compare them. So they are locally designed, but when you are trying to compare, since the designs are different, you cannot compare. So homegrown measures should be discouraged.
Okay. Another is, what's the role community need assessment in implementation research?
So okay. So here Dr. Manju was starting to ask the questions on operations research and implementation research. Community need assessment is a tool for operations research. It is not a tool for implementation research. Community need assessment if I need the volume of anti-malarial drugs to be distributed in an area in a period of 3 months is assessed based on previous number of incidents of malaria in the same season that occurred. Okay, I analyze that data and I decide what will be the supply of anti-malarial drug in that area. That will be operational research. But whether the supplied medicines reach the patients could take it, correctly diagnosed and given treatment, that will be implementation research. That's the difference between the two.
Yeah. I'll do it in the last.
And Dr. Rajendra was raising his hand. If you can unmute, if you want.
Yes, sir. Very good morning, sir.
Very good morning, sir. Please.
Sir, I have one basic question like that. Can we say that impact assessment study is implementation research, or it is the part of implementation research, sir?
It is part of implementation research. If you recall the PowerPoint slide that I was showing, we had 3 outcomes. The third outcome was impact assessment. Service, outcome, and impact assessment. It's part of implementation research.
Second question is, what is the timeline or time frame for the implementation research for in any area or any topic?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
What is the timeline or time frame for the implementation research, sir?
Okay, so the time frame for implementation research is parallel to your program implementation. Say you have to built-in system today. If I'm going to launch a program, for example, I was giving you the example of WHO now strengthening the NPCDCS program. So we as researchers will join from the day one when WHO starts meeting the administrative the Department of Health Ministry in that particular state. What transacts there, what policies are making. As implementation research, we are listening to that. Then when it gets converted into action plans and given to primary health centers, community health centers, and district hospitals, we have to go there and see how it is being converted. So implementation research will go hand in hand and parallel to the implementation process. So this particular program is a 2-year timeline given. The entire implementation research has to be completed in 2 years.
Sir.
Yeah.
सर बहुत बढ़िया लगा आपका लेक्चर.
Thank you.
काफी कुछ सीखने को मिला. सर मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ कि इम्प्लीमेंटेशन रिसर्चर हम जो लैब बेस्ड लोग जो काम करते हैं, हम भी तो एक तरह से इम्प्लीमेंटेशन रिसर्च करते हैं. जो हमारा क्वेश्चन होता है, जो हम उसको करते हैं, ड्राफ्ट करते हैं प्रोजेक्ट और उसमें क्वेश्चन लेते हैं और फिर पूरा मैनेज करते हैं, तो उसमें अनसर्टेनिटी रहती है. I think there is a difference between laboratory based implementation and extra lab to
आप इसको एक एग्जांपल से एक्सप्लेन कीजिए पहले.
जैसे कि सर मॉस्किटो पे काम करना है,
ठीक है,
हमें पता करना है कि इसमें कौन से टारगेट पे ये जो इंसेक्टिसाइड है या कैसे काम करता है, कौन से उस पे अटैक करेगा, नर्वस सिस्टम पे अटैक करेगा, ऑन पे करेगा. तो हमें पूरी हाइपोथेसिस जनरेट करनी पड़ती है. हम प्रोजेक्ट लिखेंगे, उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करेंगे, हायर करेंगे और फिर उनके हाइपोथेसिस और फिर बहुत सारे रिसर्च करके हाइपोथेसिस, आइडिया, हाइपोथेसिस, इनोवेशन और फिर उसमें डिग आउट करेंगे. सो दीज आर ऑल पार्ट ऑफ द इम्प्लीमेंटेशन एज ए पार्ट ऑफ. और उसको रूट लेवल पे टारगेट आइडेंटिफाई करना, फिर भी अनसर्टेनिटी में काम करेगा या नहीं करेगा. But it is uncertainty. What I am saying to say, in the land, lab to land concept, the transition, there is a assurity. That means we have developed some molecule or it now it will be efficacious. It should go then to implementation research. So there is a very collateral relationship between lab-based and I think that will be.
So, but that is what the tenets of my introductory slides was. That what you are doing is pre-intervention. आप पहले एक इंसेक्टिसाइड डेवलप कर रहे हैं, आप एक मॉलिक्यूल डेवलप कर रहे हैं, वो आपका प्री इंटरवेंशन स्टेज है. जब आपने प्रूव कर दिया कि मेरी लेबोरेटरी कंडीशन में ये मॉलिक्यूल और इस मॉस्किटो को किल कर सकता है, दैट इज वेयर योर रोल एज ए लेबोरेटरी रिसर्चर एंड्स. अब मैं उस मॉलिक्यूल को मार्केटेबल या एक्सेप्टेबल फॉर्म में कन्वर्ट कर पाऊंगा कि नहीं, दैट बिकम्स द जॉब ऑफ द इंडस्ट्री. वंस इंडस्ट्री हैज डन ए मार्केटेबल फॉर्म ऑफ योर प्रोडक्ट, उस प्रोडक्ट को अब मैं कम्युनिटी में लॉन्च करूं, उसे कम्युनिटी एक्सेप्ट करेगी कि नहीं, यूज करेगी कि नहीं, दैट विल बी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन रिसर्च. तो देखिए, आपकी जो फाउंडेशनल रिसर्च है वो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन रिसर्च की बेसिस बनाती. अगर ये नहीं होगा तो हम यहाँ पहुंचेंगे नहीं. सो यू आर एक्चुअली द फीडर टू द इम्प्लीमेंटेशन रिसर्च एज ए लैबोरेटरी साइंटिस्ट.
डिफरेंट स्टेजेस हैं ये डॉक्टर दीक्षित. वो टाइमलाइन के हिसाब से पहले आपका लैब का काम आएगा, उसके बाद फील्ड में जाएगा.
मैं अभी इसी क्वेश्चन के संदर्भ में ये कहना चाह रहा था, जैसे अभी आपने एडिस वाला जो दिखाया, वो डेंगू वाला लास्ट जो स्लाइड थी, ये जो उन्होंने कंट्रोल करके दिखाया केरला में इम्प्लीमेंटेशन रिसर्च में. तो देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम इन द एनोफ्लाइन मॉस्किटोस, क्योंकि हम लोग जो पढ़ाई कर रहे हैं, जैसे कि इम्प्लीमेंटेशन रिसर्च की बात करेंगे, तो हमें ये भी जानना चाहिए कि मॉस्किटो के अंदर वेरिएशन बहुत ज्यादा है. और बाकी जो नॉन कम्युनिकेबल डिसीजेज है, जैसे ह्यूमन और वायरस और या लाइफस्टाइल डायबिटीज है, बट जहां से मॉस्किटो जुड़ जाता है तो उसका लेवल भी रिसर्च का और बढ़ जाता है उसमें. और हमें फिर लोकल वेक्टर्स को पढ़ना जरूरी हो गया उस वेरिएशन के कारण, कोई रेजिस्टेंस है या नहीं है. तो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन रिसर्च के लिए भी हमें और ज्यादा मतलब वो करना पड़ेगा.
इसको थोड़ा सा हम इलैबोरेट करके देख सकते हैं इस तरीके से कि जब आप एक नया मॉलिक्यूल डेवलप कर रहे हैं, अगर आपके जहन में ये बात पहले से है कि किस सिचुएशन में, किस एनवायरनमेंट में मुझे वो अप्लाई करना है, तो डेफिनेटली वो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन रिसर्च का पार्ट बनता है. जैसे मान लीजिए कि जो आपने मॉलिक्यूल डेवलप किया, दैट इज हाइग्रोस्कोपिक, दैट इज ह्यूमिडिटी सेंसिटिव. तो इसका मतलब है कि हाईली ह्यूमिड एरिया जहां होगा वहां पे आपका जो प्रोडक्ट है वो बहुत जल्दी और मॉइस्चर एब्जॉर्ब करके अपनी इफिकेसी खो देगा. तो जब आप लैब रिसर्च कर रहे हैं, तब अगर आपको ये ध्यान में है कि मेरा प्रोडक्ट जो है वो एक ह्यूमिड क्लाइमेट में यूज होगा, तो मैं ऐसा मॉलिक्यूल ना यूज करूं. सो यू आर यूजिंग इम्प्लीमेंटेशन रिसर्च एट योर लैबोरेटरी लेवल. दैट इज पॉसिबल. तो आप जितने अवेयर होंगे अपनी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन एरिया के बारे में, इम्प्लीमेंटेशन एरिया में जो जो फैक्टर्स हैं जो आपके मॉलिक्यूल को इन्फ्लुएंस करेंगे, अगर आपकी पहले से उनके बारे में अवेयरनेस है, तो आप अकॉर्डिंगली मॉलिक्यूल डेवलप करेंगे. सो यू विल बी डायरेक्टली कंट्रीब्यूटिंग इन अ मोर सिग्निफिकेंट मैनर टू द नेक्स्ट इम्प्लीमेंटेशन लेवल. लैबोरेटरी का ये इंपॉर्टेंट कंपोनेंट होगा.
सो दैट मींस सिंपली लैब टू लैब, लाइन टू लैब.
यस यस एब्सोल्युटली. ये एक एग्जांपल था. दूसरा था कि जो हिस्टोरिकली हम देखते हैं कि सपोज देयर आर पीपल हु आर वेजिटेरियंस और आपने कोई ऐसी ड्रग बनाई जो किसी एनिमल के ब्लड से बनी है, सो द स्ट्रिक्ट वेजिटेरियन में रिफ्यूज टू टेक इट. तो वो आपकी पूरी रिसर्च यूजलेस हो गई उस पर्टिकुलर कम्युनिटी के लिए, क्योंकि वो दवाई खाएंगे नहीं. So that knowledge for implementation part about the public health perspective, वो आपकी रिसर्च में वैल्यू एडिशन करेगा.
Any other?
If you will permit.
Yeah.
Just one last thing. So do you suggest or do you recommend that all programs or whatever public health programs should have inbuilt implementation research component in there?
No, it is not something blanket. When you feel while discussing and developing your project, if you see there's a relevance and there's a need of having an implementation research component, please do it. But don't force it, don't push it at a time. मान लीजिए अभी बहुत प्रीमेच्योर आइडिया है, अभी वो लॉन्च के लेवल पे तैयार ही नहीं है, उस समय आप implementation research.
When it becomes a program.
Yes, once it becomes a program, I believe implementation research should be part of it. Yes, definitely.
So I think we are running short on time, and I'm sure there must be many more questions, but I have one last question which I'm permitted to ask.
Yes.
Yeah. So you ruled out scalability in one of your slides, and you were very emphatic about it.
Yeah.
You can always disregard that. If you say we have generated certain level of acceptability by the community in Bareilly, or the proof of concept technology or whatever intervention we have work done on, Bareilly accepted, and there were certain results in Bareilly.
Right.
How different will that be from Agra? Can we draw a set of parameters which may be somewhere common and we can take it to the another area? But if you rule out scalability totally, then do we have only contextual implementation research in every place with the size of country like India? Can't we extrapolate it anytime?
Okay, great. So let me explain further when I said it is a question of scalability. In a homogeneous population, scalability is not a problem. If Bareilly, Agra, Kanpur, Lucknow, Raebareli, this entire zone has all identical parameters in context of malaria, and I did my study in Bareilly, then doing it for the rest of the same homogeneous area is not a problem. That scalability is absolutely applicable. My question is blind scalability without taking into consideration the variations in the parameter. That is why I quoted whether it is Meghalaya, Tamil Nadu or Kerala.
So they can't be totally different.
But in a homogeneous population, obviously it is scalable. Yeah, true.
I have several questions, but time permits.
That can be discussed later.
Yes.
So before we conclude today's session, I have two announcements to make. Under the various activities and public engagement activities, MERA-India is announcing basic mosquito biology training for PhD students. We did this training last time. That was allowed only for NIMR students, but for this time, we are expanding this to Delhi NCR region students only.
I see.
For now. Another is for this registration is free, and this would be an in-person training, and applications are invited for this event till 7th of October. And more details can be found on our website. Second is we are also planning for an image competition in scientific research, and this is open for PhD students and postdocs at national level. And this we will mostly will do on 1st of November, but details will be there on our website soon. So these are the two announcements from my side. And with this, we thank Dr. Arun Sharma for this wonderful talk. And this was waiting thing.
It was getting postponed again and again.
Yeah.
I think it was worth the wait, sir.
Yeah. So with this, I thank you, all the audience and all online audience, and Dr. Ali.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
So we thank you heartily for
thank you.
doing this talk. This is
Thank
really
you for
wonderful.
having me here.